Hey everybody, welcome back to the quest for the bestest. That's right, we're here again this week to continue on our long, our treacherous, our arduous, our other adjective that I can't think of right now, our journey to find the very best of the best picture winners of all time. I'm Timo. I'm joined by Tucker and Tanner. Last week we had a special guest, my friend Ryan. Since Abram's still on vacation, we are just doing it, the three of us.
We're honestly not sure if Abram's ever going to come back, and that's kind of okay with me.
Well, see. At least we don't have to worry about ties today. We'll get some sort of decision by the end of it. I mean, we normally get a decision by the end of the episode, but this time I'm especially sure that we will figure something out. But that brings me to the movie that we're talking about today. It's Spotlight from 2015. It's directed by Tom McCarthy. He's got a pretty hard-hitting cast. We've got Mark Ruffalo, Michael Keaton, Rachel McAdams, Liv Schreiber, among others.
I think it's pronounced Liev.
Liev Schreiber. Sorry.
Nice. That's okay.
If he was Marty, let's get the first fucking point on this movie. I loved his performance.
Oh, that's good. It was really good.
Fucking great. That voice, his fucking voice, his expressions, always really like stone faced. Fucking fantastic. Just like, because I'm not really familiar with that actor. I've seen this movie before, but I honestly had totally forgotten about him. But great fucking performance from him.
Well, you're jumping the gun a little bit, Tucker, because I'm afraid we have no idea what we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Oh, it's true.
I forgot what we talked about last week. What did we talk about last week, Timo?
I've got that answer. I have got that answer. We had Ryan on, but we were talking about the movie Kramer versus Kramer from
that's right.
1979, and we decided that Kramer versus Kramer was at 6th place, sandwiched in between The Hurt Locker and The Godfather Part 2. And we've had some rumblings about moving stuff around. We will see if that ends up happening. But keep in mind that this is an aggregate list. This is, if you will, an average of where we think these movies can go. And so when we have big disparities, like happens with the Godfather movies, we can end up with some weird placements, especially in that middle range. You know, someone like me thinks it should be somewhat high, and someone like Tucker thinks it should be somewhat low.
The worst movie he's ever seen. Godfather Part 2.
It can end up in the middle. That's how the list works. It makes it more difficult for us to rank. It makes it a little confusing, but it provides,
it gives its own charm.
It's got. You're absolutely right. It's got its own charm. It's got its own interest. Its intrigue. You know,
it's true.
It makes it a list that you show people, and they look at you like you're an alien from Mars when you show them this list.
An alien from Uranus.
Yep, that's what's happened to me whenever I've listed out the movies. When people ask, they're like, "What the heck?" Like.
But hell yeah, that's what we're going for.
And then I plug. I say, well, if you want to know why the movies are where they are, you got to listen to the podcast. So if you're listening on wherever, you know, you got it rated 5 stars if you enjoyed. Download if you're on Spotify. We have a YouTube channel. We have a Twitter account. We post lots of other stuff if you're interested in hearing our voices more, having our lovely faces part of your everyday routine. We've got stuff for you. You want to yell at us in the comment section on YouTube? Go ahead. You won't be the only one. But enough rambling, enough slooping, schlumping amount.
Let's talk about Boston.
Let's
talk about Boston. The Catholic Church.
Not a lot of Boston accents in this movie.
Well, that's what I want to note that off the bat. I think everyone in the cast was going for one, except for maybe Rachel McAdams, because it came through in bits.
Yeah, she was from Ohio, regardless.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's smart thinking on the part of Tom McCarthy or whoever wrote this movie. I don't really know, but I think the Boston accent came across a little bit in Mark Ruffalo. I for sure in Michael Keaton once or twice on a few words.
Yeah.
I guess I'm happy that they didn't go all out for it. Because that's
we gotta park the car in Harvard Yard, like something like that, you know.
Yeah, but they didn't go goodwill hunting with it.
Could have been a little bit overwhelming.
Yes, especially since I don't think most of those actors are from Boston, and
yeah, I doubt it. Yeah.
But the movie wasn't about Boston. What was the movie about?
The movie was not about Boston. The movie, in pretty much all senses of the phrase, was a tough movie to watch. It's about a tough subject. Yeah. You got this group of journalists, the Spotlight team is where the movie's title comes.
Of the Boston Globe paper.
Of the Boston Globe paper, which that's where all your journalism stories, you get your newsroom. It's a newsroom drama with journalism and uncovering stuff, basically. They go to uncover acts of mass molestation by priests and then cover-ups by higher-ups within the Catholic Church in Boston, with implications for the wider world.
Yes.
It's based on a true story. This is stuff that actually happened. It's
In the early 2000s?
early 2000s. It's
and actually,
damn terrifying.
Actually still happens to this day. We should acknowledge.
This is the movie. To me, seemed like it painted a light that we hope that this can be solved. It was not made that long ago, but it really hasn't. To be honest, it really hasn't been solved.
I haven't done the research, but I was just thinking, as soon as this movie finishes, you've got those end title cards that tell you what really happened and to the extent that it happened, and then what the follow up was. Because the follow up of the effects of the article being written aren't shown in the movie.
Yeah.
That is right as the article is essentially being reacted to. Bam, cut to fucking credits, which I think is both interesting and a little bit shortened. I feel like it could have been cool to see some of the after effects, but I'm just sitting there thinking in my head, how did this movie impact the Catholic Church? How did it impact the mass molestation? How did it impact the communities around
Bringing
that?
back this story.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Be like, this is a great movie that shines light on it, but it also was nominated for Best Picture and then won. So it was given even more wider appeal in that regard, more light shown on it. And I think that's probably why it won Best Picture. I've been thinking about that a lot, and it's like, okay, yeah, great editing, great story, but the fact that this is uncovering something that is such a big issue, I think, is what pushed it over that bar to win. So it could get even more eyes on it. But I have no idea how this actually impacted the world around us.
Yeah, well, so last week at the end of the episode, Tanner, you were pretty hyped to talk about this movie.
Listen,
And
Ecstatic, I would say.
Yeah.
we are all somewhat affiliated with journalism. Tanner's a journalism major. I'm a journalism minor. Tucker is a schmuck who likes journalism.
He reads articles sometimes.
So what did you think right off the bat?
I gotta do me like that.
Listen, this is my second time watching this movie. I watched it. The first time I watched it was for actually a journalism class that I took freshman year of college.
Oh.
And it held up in every regard. In fact, I even got some. I gained some more respect for the way it depicts journalism in this, because they don't paint the paper in like 90% of the time they paint the paper in a very glorious, the arbiters of truth and justice.
The gatekeepers of information, as journalists often were referred in the early 2000s.
Some of my favorite parts were when, like, Michael Keaton would say, per se, at the end, would say, well, what about us? We received all this information years ago about these Catholic priests molesting children. And it's
Great twist.
He specifically did. He's like, and then they kind of hand wave it like, well, I don't remember that. But they bring that up multiple times, is that the paper received this information before, and that while we can respect these individual journalists, the institution of the Boston Globe and journalism in itself isn't flawless and does have issues. One of my favorite lines in it came early in the movie, or like halfway through, I think. It was when Marty was meeting with the cardinal in Boston, and
Cardinal Law.
Yeah, Cardinal Law.
Which, by the way, I thought that was some sort of legal thing.
Yeah.
Didn't know his name for a while.
I did too. Yeah.
Based on a true story, that's his guy's actual name, so that's not a criticism.
But yeah, you kind of get the sense that even though the Cardinal Law doesn't know that Spotlight Team is working on this story, he is trying. It's part of this. They say it's a tradition for the editor of the Boston Globe to meet with the Cardinal, and along with that tradition of the meeting, it's a tradition that the Cardinal sort of leans on the editor and says, "Listen, Catholic Church papers tend to turn a blind eye to us." That's the message that he's sending. I think he has a line about there's strength when great institutions work together, and then that's rebutted by I prefer a great institution. I think the journalism industry should stand alone, and I think that's a theme that I didn't pick up on the first time watching this movie. That I really picked up on this time is that these institutions working together, the Catholic Church and the justice system, and to an extent the actual journalism system in Boston and worldwide, quite honestly.
Yeah, wow. I think that this movie's greatest strength, and I was noticing this throughout, and it's as I was getting started, I was like remembering who the characters were, because I have seen this movie before, and I was getting back into the groove of it. But I think this movie's greatest strength, and the reason why it ended up resonating with me a lot more the second time than I did the first time. I honestly don't really remember too much about my first time watching it, but is the fact that the story builds and grows and shines light on all sorts of aspects of all sorts of different parts of Boston and these institutions. Nothing is without fault here. They bring up the question of the point that none of this could have gone on unless all levels of institutions, from individual people, the parents of the kids, the social relationships between people, of victims not wanting to talk, to the journalism industry, to the Catholic Church, to the priests, to the fucking governmental system, everyone is working to cover this up, and that's a really powerful thing to think about.
Yes.
Right? And that's revealed throughout the movie. And you even realize that some of the characters that we know, like Michael Keaton, have been involved in that. Like, this is such a ingrained thing in society that no one is without fault. And this article and this team bringing light to it is sort of one of the first cracks in the knowledge of it, which I think is really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both of you have talked a lot about the story, and while you did hype me up a lot for this movie, I am gonna say that I was kind of underwhelmed by it. I've seen some other journalism movies. I've seen some of the greats, like All the President's Men and stuff, and
Citizen Kane, heard of it?
Citizen Kane, I ever heard of a little indie movie. While I think it's a very important story, and I don't think it's a bad movie, I think it's a very good movie that has a lot to say and tells a very important story. I just didn't get a whole lot from it. It didn't seem like it was super, super, like, even the powerful moments to me seemed to kind of not hit. Like when they get the letters and he's like reading through them and he's reading all this terrible stuff, and just like the way the movie was constructed to me I almost wanted that movie to just like ladle on how terrible this was. To just like show it to me, just give it all to me, and like be ham-fisted, which the movie was not. And in my opinion, that kind of brought it down. I think that when I think about this movie and its story, when you think about it and how would you tell the story in another medium, I really don't find very much difference in this, like the structure, the form of how this movie is told as a film versus if it were a series like newspaper articles or something like that. And while it is, I almost thought it was more about the journalism, which I don't know. I think there's room for that. I think the journalism movie is a genre, and in this they take that and they run with it in this movie, and they talk about uncovering this stuff. And while it's fun, I was kind of confused. There were some characters like that. There were scenes that I didn't know why was in there, and while I was like, I can appreciate it, I'm not sure that I can really be like, this is like great. It's middling to me, is how I would put it.
It hurts my heart to hear you say that, Timo. It really does.
I actually think that you're right on some aspects, but a little bit incorrect in others. And I have two minds of the fact that this could have been told in other ways. There are some instances where this is, yes, I understand why this is a movie, why it works so well as a movie, especially in the conversations with the victims. I think those are some of the most powerful parts of the movie. The movie does not, the script in the movie and the filmmaking doesn't pass over the fact that these people have been horribly treated. They don't water down. There's a moment where they're like, we're not going to water this down, right? Like the real stories need to be told no matter how explicit it is, to get people to notice. And I think that is why it works well as a movie. But I agree that some of its weight is actually knocked out because this is a 2-hour movie, very close to that, maybe a little longer or shorter.
Like 2:10.
Yeah, something like that. But because of that truncated length, like this isn't a super long form thing, it loses a little bit of a weight because it tries to balance so many people, so many relationships. There are so many people that have so many relationships with so many people that it became overwhelming. I'm like, okay, I had to remember, they're saying this guy's name over and over again, but which actor was that, and what's his place in society, and which job does he have, and what's his relationship to the history of this? There's a lot of things to remember, and I don't think it does a great job balancing that, especially because none of the characters really get full character arcs. They don't really get full development.
I will counter you, even though I somewhat agree with it being confusing. I think that like all of these movies like this are like that. Like All the President's Men has just like tons of characters, and you got to keep them all straight, and they're all giving you stuff, and you have to figure it out as well. That's like part of the journalism genre. Yeah. And to me,
it's piecing together information that this person, and you got a letter or an email from this person, and you tie that all together into a story. That's what journalism genre is.
Like it to be clearer, but I don't know how to do that. and I don't even know if filmmakers who make this kind of stuff are. I brought up the point about not being because I want to talk about some of the stuff that I like, but I just kind of want to get this off because we talked about it earlier. Marty, he's the editor in chief, right?
Yes.
He had all those scenes where he's going around doing stuff outside the paper, and I didn't understand why he was doing any of those. Like I didn't
like what for example.
So like the Cardinal scene, I kind of get now that you explained, but there was like other scenes where he was like out and about, right?
I mean,
like
each time that he is interacting with people outside of like, the office, like his job, those are usually scenes in which it's sort of revealing the bad of a side of an institution. He's the new guy, so people aren't afraid to like to give it to him straight. Like they don't have to sugarcoat it because they're like, oh, he's going to be gone in a few years, right? Like that is a story point there. And
okay.
Because he's an outsider, like he's this new face, I think it sort of just gives a different perspective, right? Like it's such a different perspective from Michael Keaton's character who knows everyone and has been there his whole life. It's interesting to see those character dynamics because it lets you see different sides of the people that are interacting with. Like, okay, how do they interact with someone they don't know versus someone they've known their entire life, right? I think that was the point of those scenes.
All right, I get that. It just, to me, it seemed, because I didn't understand that was going on the first time. Now, this is my first time seeing it, and both of you noted that you got more out of it the second time through.
Yes.
I think that's fair to note. I just in the moment, it seemed I was a little confused, and therefore it made it seem a little unnecessary to me. I just wanted to hear about the Spotlight team and how they were doing their stuff, and this whole bit about the new editor just seemed like extra. And while it's there, the problem with that criticism is like that's the truth, right? There probably was a new editor, and there probably was all this stuff, and so it's just
like you said, it took an outsider to sort of spur this to sort of spur the story on.
Yeah, and that's one of the story points in the movie.
Yeah, well, right? He is the instigator of the investigation.
Right. To a couple points that you made, Tucker, I just wanted to note on. I can understand like the thing of there being too many characters, especially minor ones that they get information from. I didn't feel confused, probably because I was just like much more invested in the story. And I think that actually, the sparingly used character moments are utilized very well. Because this isn't a movie about characters; it's a movie about it's a movie about uncovering the story and the team that works together to do so. But I think the insights that we get into the lives of Mark Ruffalo's character, Rachel McAdams' character, I think that they're very telling. Rachel McAdams has like she doesn't get used as much for her like personal life, but the idea of having a grandmother who's like so invested and like so in love with church, she goes 3 times a week, and then working on the story that will break your grandmother's heart is a really compelling idea. Mark Ruffalo, he's so dedicated to his work. He's a one-track mind, and he's very strong. He's very headstrong. That's the word I'm looking for. He runs to work and he comes in on Sundays, and that's because when we get to see into his personal life that he's like on the rocks with his wife. He's not living with his wife anymore, and it's because that he's so invested in his work. So yeah, I think those insights into the characters were utilized very well and were balanced very well out with the overall story it was trying to tell.
I don't know, the Mark Ruffalo, his character, it was a little weird for me. It went over my head that he was on the rocks with his wife, to be honest. I guess I just didn't intuit it or didn't pay attention, but it was the other guy.
They said it a couple times.
Yeah, well,
somehow it missed me.
Early in the movie, they talk about like, oh, he's married. Like, so like, but then when you go home with him, or when Michael Keaton,
didn't put the pieces together.
Yeah, when Michael Keaton goes home, he's living in like a dingy apartment. He's like, so how's any news on what your wife thinks? He's like, it's not going too well or whatever.
Okay, well, I was gonna say out of those moments, my favorite was the third. Actually, was with the other guy. Who was the other reporter on the Spotlight team?
I forget that actor's name.
Brian Darcy James.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
When he's searching, there's that moment where he's looking through the list, and he finds an address of the treatment home, and he realizes it's like on his street, and he goes around the corner and he looks at it, and he puts up
shot.
Yeah, and he puts up that note on his. That was, out of all those moments, that one was the one that connected with me the most, and I almost wish to see more out of that. But
Yes,
I was like, ooh, like that's like. And then he comes to
think-
work and he asks
yeah.
about being able to talk to his, and they like tell him no, which
And yeah, that was a storyline that wasn't really followed up on. Like
Well, I
Michael
think-
Keaton says no, and that's like a moment there. Like he's like, there's like, oh, there's tension there, but then that's not really.
There wasn't
followed up.
tension there though, because Brian Darcy James, his character is a professional, and that's
he does
I think,
understand why.
I think that serves the journalism genre, is because you're seeing how this massive story that they're uncovering impacts literally on his street and is endangering potentially his children. And then but he still has to be a professional, and he understands when Michael Keaton says no, because the story that they're covering is going to do a lot more good if he keeps it on the down low.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying about all these characters, about the backstories and their personal lives being in there. I just honestly don't think they were pushed enough. I agree with Timo about the thing about the treatment center being so close to his house. That one take shot was really powerful. The fact that it followed him all the way there, it's like, okay, this is how close it is. We can do it in one shot. And that was a great moment. I think that I agree that the relationship with Rachel McAdams and her Nana, that's a great moment. But each of these characters have their personality traits and their histories and their backgrounds just touched upon. And I think the fact that you don't get enough, in my opinion, of these characters' histories and their backstories to really relate to them enough for it to feel the personal emotional impact that I think Timo was missing.
I don't
and
think
a little bit from me too.
I just don't think that that's the point of the movie. It's not a character movie. It's a journalism movie. It's a biopic. It's about a massive story, and I think their characters get touched on enough, because like they said, they're all lapsed Catholics pretty much. And that gives them a certain amount of investment in this, and also gives you the idea of just how widespread Catholicism is, especially in the Boston area, and why it's so difficult for them to uncover this information, and the barriers they have to come up against within the legal system.
Tucker, you said about that one take, going down the street with the house, and like I think while I'm not like overly impressed with the cinematography in this movie, it's pretty flat, as I would say. There's no it works. There are a couple moments of especially good visual storytelling. That shot, there's a shot where Rachel McAdams and the gay guy victim that she's talking to walk, and the camera like pans around them, and there's a playground, and then there's a church in the background, and there's so many freaking churches in the background.
I noted that a few times too. It was a montage of them talking to a bunch of victims, and it sort of was a close shot, and then it cuts to a wide shot, and it's that person's apartment, and there's a giant cathedral in the background.
I thought that was especially powerful, because that got the message across that the church was there more than any of the other scenes where people were talking to each other. Like I saw that and I'm like, oh, the church is literally looming over these people all the time.
Yes.
Figuratively and literally.
Yeah,
yes.
and they could have, while they showed it and they told it, only the showing worked for me. But another example, when they were talking to, who's the lawyer?
Billy Crudup.
Well, they were talking to the lawyer, and he had his victim in, and he finally let the guy get interviewed.
Oh, Stanley Tucci.
Yeah.
Yes.
Garabedian, yeah.
Garabedian, and
there's two lawyers.
Mark Ruffalo's looking at him, and they talk back and forth, and he says like, oh, like I'm lucky to be alive or whatever. And then as he leaves, and as you notice through the interview more and more, you can see that he has
track marks,
needle marks on his arm, and it's not said in the interview, but you see it. Mark Ruffalo's character sees it, and the dude who's getting interviewed knows that you and everyone, and he like hides it. And I was like, it was like a very close up shot. We were meant to see.
Well, actually,
it. But
he does mention that. He's like, people go for the bottle or the needle. He says that in part of his thing, which I think is interesting.
But he doesn't
because
he doesn't reference himself, which I think leads to that this is a moment of visual storytelling. While I think the movie, like these are the only examples I can think of actually, but well, as a whole, it doesn't seem like a movie where it uses movie techniques to tell the story. These moments, it does. This is counter to my story, and I think that works. But I mean, I can't think of any other examples of that throughout the film to tell some of the stuff that I missed while I was watching it, and or to further hammer that emotional point. I don't know, how could they have shown those letters to us as the viewer? Could we have, besides reading them out loud, telling them to us? And then I feel like while the setting, I don't know what to think about the setting. The sets is what I mean.
Yeah.
They are dull and ugly.
Well, I actually have this comment about the sets and the costume design. Is that it's intentionally, these are mild mannered, middle wage making journalists. They're not hard hitting, like on the cutting edge. They're just like, they go home to their like dingy apartment because they're on the rocks with their wife every night, or they just have they go to church with their nana. They're everyday people, and this isn't like some glorified setting. It's what the inside of a newspaper office looks like, and it's what those people dress like.
I actually think that the biggest issue with it being sort of flat is the lighting. This movie is lit like a fucking TV show. It is,
I think
bland.
Again, I think that's intentional, because that's what the lighting inside of those buildings looks like.
I just think that it really could have been handled in, because it's honestly not just the inside of those buildings. Like they there's plenty of outside shots too, and I think that they just don't take the lighting to that next level to make it more visually appealing. And every time I was looking at a shot, and I'm like, well, everything here just looks fucking gray. Like I get that that's the setting, but you can do things with it that make it more intriguing visually to keep your
for me it's about like hyping up the drama. There's drama here that I want to be hyped up, that I want the film to communicate to me about like why this is important. I understand, logically, my logical brain gets why I need to care about this, but my emotional side,
artistically, you're saying,
emotionally and artistically, it doesn't quite communicate the gravity and the weight of it, and it relies on the logic side, which honestly, as in the journalism training I've received, you're not supposed to rely on the emotional artistic side. You're supposed to hit them with the facts and let the facts speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And I almost think that because this is a movie, not a journalism story, they should have branched over a little bit more into that space to make it a little bit more hard hitting, to make people who understand and even know about journalism to feel the hard hitting bits of it. And then when it goes to press, you can't have a journalism movie and not have the scene with the brrr. I mean, I saw that and I was like, this is a genre cliche and it's got to be there. If that was missing, I'd be pissed.
Mm-hmm.
But
also,
in that
way
moment,
later in the movie.
Yeah,
so
it's like in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, and in that moment, but I still didn't feel the climax of it. I was happy to see it as a film watcher, but I wasn't satisfied to see it as this like emotionally invested viewer.
Yeah. But so I've been sort of, pissing on this movie in some qualities, but I have it on my page as a 9 out of 10. This movie's really fucking good. And
you know it is. I
think that this movie works so well because of the pacing, the script, and what's the third thing I was mentioning? The editing. Because this movie is zero, fucking count them, zero, no fingers, zero downtime. Because even in the downtime of these characters, at the end of each of those fucking downtime scenes, they're fucking, watching baseball, eating a fucking piece of pizza, whatever.
Yeah.
They look up at the sky and like, oh shit, it just hit me. Like this happened, or someone mentioned something offhandedly. Even the down moments are pushing the story forward in a really engaging way. And it keeps it so snappy, and you have to be on your toes and paying attention to fucking everything, that as the movie built more and more, I was like, okay, I'm really invested because I need to be paying attention to everything. And that stress about there being too many characters and relationships and histories for me to remember resolved itself as it went on, and characters sort of were brought back for more important story points. But I think that the balance between all of it, while I might have been turned off at the beginning, is handled so elegantly as the story progresses. That is why I ended up enjoying it so much as the movie sort of finished up.
Speaking of like the crazy forward momentum this film has, I want to shout out the score, which I typically don't notice a lot in movies, but there were certain scenes in this where like the score was just like a driving sort of kind of basic for a journalism genre movie.
It's composed by Howard Shore. He did the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. This dude
Okay.
knows what he's doing.
Yeah, but yeah, it sticks out in the best ways because it's like, holy shit, we're cruising along at a clip here, and it's
Truthfully,
it's just great.
I barely noticed it, and it didn't.
Same here.
It didn't hamper it at all. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think the script carried enough of that pacing. I think you're right about the pacing. It is very good. In my final thoughts before I gather and tabulate our results, while it is good, and I think that I don't really know out of all the movies that were released in 2015.
Yeah, 2015 was a really good year for Best Picture nominees, and I could have understood some other winner, but I appreciate this one.
It just doesn't feel. It feels good. Feels like I could recommend this movie to someone, but it doesn't feel like it's my. It can't be my top. It doesn't feel like something extraordinarily special to me.
Yeah.
Tanner?
My final thoughts. I fucking love this movie. It depicts journalism so well. I wish we could have had more time to delve into.
I do want to ask Tanner, because you're a journalism student.
Yes.
The moment where Mark Ruffalo character bribes the dude to get the records.
Well,
is that good or bad journalism?
That's not ethical. That is not ethical in the slightest. But I like.
But does he have? But does he have the story?
He does have the story.
If he gets, so.
You know what?
Know. It's complicated.
Maybe it happened. Maybe it didn't. But I do like that it doesn't sanitize journalism. It doesn't sugarcoat it. When they're talking to victims, it is tough. That's something that we've been trained about in class. Is like when you're talking to a victim of something,
they're people.
They're people, and you need to respect their trauma. But you kind of do need to push for what you're looking for, especially when you're trying to prove a point like they are in this movie. Quick thing about the victims too. I like that the movie emphasizes how important the church was to these people, especially they're from low-income neighborhoods. There's a great line in there that's one of the victims says, "And how do you say no to God?"
Yeah, there's a lot of those moments like God was coming into my life when I was abused, and I think that's a really interesting like spiritual internal conflict to have.
Yeah,
like I honestly wish it had dove a little more into that, but obviously it's a journalism movie, not a religion movie. So
I think it handles the journalism very well. I think it handles the victims very well. Institutions acting as a whole to like cover up giant overarching stories that impact people. I think it handles these all really well. It has a great forward driving momentum, has great performances. I think the character moments are parsed out and utilized very well sparingly as trying to tell this overall story. I think even its handling of like 9/11 as kind of like a story device.
That is a very interesting moment because I drew a parallel to 9/11 to Pearl Harbor and From Here to Eternity.
Yes.
And this did it right. This movie did it right.
There's another movie I watched in October called The Poughkeepsie Tapes. Terrible movie. Uses 9/11 as a story device. Terribly. Anyway, I love this movie. I'll sing the praises of it all day long.
All right. Well, we gotta take a quick break. We'll be right back with our rankings, and then we get to reach out to God to see what God and randomness and everything will feed us next week. Well, we'll be right back with our rankings. All right, I've gotten through ESP. I've got our things. I've got them calculated this week. We've done an average. It's a straight numerical average of the numbers that we picked to put it on our list. Each one of us put it, and then we used the old calculations, the old division to figure out.
Straight up mathematics, arithmetic.
We've had enough of this unscientific ranking, is what it is. True. We got to be scientific. Well, we're about to destroy.
Is the system we use.
We're about to destroy our science after I reveal this number because it's, well, as you might have guessed in this, it's not a round number.
No.
The number is 5 and 2/3. 5.666.
So between 5 and 6, you're saying?
That's what it would seem to be, between 5 and 6.
Yeah, which means it makes it 6.
Between the Hurt Locker and Kramer versus Kramer.
Yes, that's what it would seem to be.
And so this is our first time doing this. I personally think that sounds pretty good.
I mean, I'm not a fan, obviously.
So that was very close to Tucker's number. Tucker, we can talk about the numbers. I put it at number 10, actually. I think
10?
I think it's
moly.
Worse than French Connection, actually.
Oh my God.
Tanner put it at number 2, and Tucker put it at 5. And the average of that is smack dab at 6, basically.
And here's the thing. It's a little bit disappointing to the two of you because it doesn't match where you wanted to put it. But it is factually the aggregate of where we wanted to put it.
Yeah, but it's a good movie and you guys don't like it. And I hate you for that.
Well,
I do.
I think
like it,
I'll get the
though.
chance to say that to both of you sometime in the future. So I guess I
Well-
don't know. I mean,
God damn it! We got another system that doesn't completely work.
Well, I understand it is probably the best system because it's mathematically correct. It's mathematically the average, but I'm not a fan because it's not top 5.
I was debating between 9 and 10. Those were the two choices. Like that was you could have swayed and for a while I was like, yeah, but then I was like, it's really, I really, for me, French Connection is a very good movie, and I couldn't quite. I don't know. I felt more.
Okay.
It made me feel more.
So that means it's going at number 6.
That means it's gonna go at number 6. So I guess let's take a look at our little graph. It'll cover Tucker's head right up in the middle
Oh,
there.
green mode.
Oh no!
In the middle of
Green Mo.
recording.
Oh,
Oh dear.
well, we're gonna live with it. You know what?
Yeah, fine. We only got a little bit left.
It goes right in the middle. So let's take a look at it real quick. Wow, whoa.
Oh wow! Look at that. Too low.
2 people are disappointed. Too high. Just a room for disappointment. Okay,
Why do you guys hate journalism? Why do you guys hate truth?
Truth.
Let
Okay.
me once again show my 9 out of 10. I love this fucking movie.
Well, so do I. But why did you put it at number 5, you imbecile?
Because I like the other movies more.
No.
That is how
don't.
that is how the list works, I'm afraid. But now it's time to tempt fate to ask the god of random chance, our little friend the wheel.
Should we do the song? Here we go.
No.
Let the
Wheel,
song-
wheel, what's
wheel,
your
wheel,
deal?
wheel. What's your deal? Wheel, wheel. Give us a
Oh.
movie that'll make us squeal.
Oh, we're doing. I was gonna listen. I'll handle it. I got it. Okay, here we go. Wheel, wheel, what's
gonna
your
spin.
deal? Give us a movie
We're spinning.
that makes us squeal. Wheel, is it on digital or is it on real? Wheel, wheel, what's your deal?
And with that,
Let it be a note that I'm not a fan of this.
Yeah, Tucker doesn't like that.
No, he does
holy,
not.
holy,
Pleasing.
Stromboli, boys. We got a
Oh.
good number. It's a great number this week. Let me
God, I
tell
don't have
you.
the list pulled up.
Number 47.
Oh, 47.
47, which means in the lower portion. This is,
good.
of course, the 1961 Best Picture winner, directed by Robert Wise. This is, unfortunately for me, a musical. This is West Side Story.
West Side Story.
I can't believe it. You know what? Wait. Am I looking at the updated?
What?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
No, I'm not looking because we messed with the list. 47 on the list with Spotlight still there.
Oh.
This Lawrence of
Does
Arabia,
happen
you
to be
motherfucker.
Lawrence of
Oh
Arabia, my
my
favorite
God.
movie of all time.
The bait and switch. The bait and
That
switch.
bait and switch. So I looked at that and my eyes just about bugged out of my head because I was like, oh no, this is not the right time to watch this movie. It's going to get thrashed. But I'm saved. God is on my side today, baby.
So that means
Yeah.
that next week we are watching definitively.
West Side Story, directed by
West
okay.
Side
Robert
Story.
Wise.
That's
We are
that's-
still watching West Side Story. Okay.
My list was wrong. Tucker, this is why I entrust Tucker with the list making duties. He is much more of a list master, a knowledgeable curator. But that's correct. We were looking at West Side Story, 1961, Robert Wise. This is, honestly, it's a great Broadway play. It
Yeah.
does amazing things musically in the play, and it's a Broadway show. It's not even a play. Really.
I've been wanting to watch West Side Story for a long time. I'm a big musical fan myself. Tucker is not.
Not particularly.
We're a real odd couple, me and Tucker.
It's true.
I
it's
am
true.
I am kind of excited to see this. Is a great movie.
Tucker or Timo, what do you feel about musicals?
I like them when they're good.
Okay, that's fair.
Same here.
Okay.
Except
Well-
most of them aren't.
Well, there you go,
Well,
Tucker.
West Side Story is a famous musical.
It's
We'll see
very
if it lives
famous.
up.
I totally hope I enjoy it. It's possible.
I mean, it's a great story, and we'll
A
get
West Side
Fuel
one.
for their for the remake that they're trying to figure out how to make.
True.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg.
Thank you, boys, for joining me. Even though I've
Mm-hmm.
been transformed to the Martian dimension of green, apparently, had some
Yes.
issues on Zoom today. I guess it's all right. All you audio listeners out there, worry free. It's gonna sound great.
It's not gonna sound green.
I don't know how to. I might need to watch some YouTube tutorials to learn how to do that.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me. Next week, we're talking about West Side Story by Robert Wise and Jerome Robbins. It's going to be a interesting discussion. I'm excited for it. We got an old number. We barely averted tragedy today is how I'm going to
Oh
say.
wow.
God, that
I'm
would have been so
excited.
much fun.
I own West Side Story on Blu-ray, and I'm excited.
Oh, it's
gonna
true.
be it's gonna be a dancey time, ladies and gentlemen. Get your jazz hands ready.
We're gonna have a good time. We've had some downers the last couple weeks in terms of
Mhm.
films watched, but this I don't think is a downer very much.
No.
It's Romeo
think
and
so.
Juliet. That's the story.
Okay, well,
I mean, we'll see. Thank you for joining me. We'll be back next week to talk about this movie. As always, hit those buttons, which whichever ones you want to hit. They're there for you to press.
Hopefully the positive ones.
Hopefully the positive ones.
let's hope so.
We got more content on YouTube and Twitter. We're at Backlog Banter. This has been the quest for the bestest. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week. Peace.
So long.
Wait, did you not notice it when you were editing?
I didn't recall
noticing.
Timo,
Greenmo!
you're green.
Greenmo's back.
Fuck! Ja, und ich
you go to
spreche
Sweden?
Deutsch sehr, sehr gut. So,
Can you go to your fucking motherland? No, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna fucking record a video. Stop. Get your fingers off your goddamn keyboard, you little monkey man.
Okay, good. Ready to go.